we'll move on to the next speaker, Dr. M.B. Vishwanath ji. M.B. Vishwanath ji is working at IIT Hyderabad. Has adjunct professor in the Department of Heritage Sciences and Technology. Otherwise, he is known for his very enlightening talks on very many concepts of Hindu dharma, Hindu culture, traditions, shastric texts. He is a polymath scholar in many aspects of shastras. And today he is going to talk about exploring Paripūrṇatā in Muttusvami Dikshitar's SriRama Kṛtis. Over to you, Dr. M.B. Vishwanath ji.
Om Yoma Bhaginagum Samtamatha Bhaganchikirshati Abhagamagne Tankuruma Magne Bhaginankuru Namo Brahmane Dharanam Me Astvanirakaranam Dharayita Bhuya Sankarnayo Shrutam Machyo Odhvam Mamamushya Om Srotamsi sarvarshi hridam yadiye prajna samudre milanam bhajanti tam jnana vijnana nidhim sharanyam Shri Sadgurun Tvam Sharanam Prapadye Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. My humble pranamas to the lotus feet of SriRama Prabhu. And without taking much of the time in the beginning, the topic is exploring Paripūrṇatā in the Kṛtis, in the compositions of Muttusvami Dikshitar. As we all know, Muttusvami Dikshitar is a very well-known figure in the Karnataka Shastriya Sangeeta field. And probably there will be anybody who haven't heard about Muttusvami Dikshitar. And fortunately, this also happens to be the 250th birth anniversary of Muttusvami Dikshitar. And he has composed so many Kṛtis on so many deities. Whenever we talk about Muttusvami Dikshitar, we usually associate Muttusvami Dikshitar with the idea, with the fact that it is geographical. His compositions are mostly related to a particular place and the deity present in that particular place, which is absolutely not wrong, which is true, which is absolutely true. However, there are many more aspects to Dīkṣitar Kṛtis which we need to explore. Here, throughout his Kṛtis, when we take a look at the number of Kṛtis that Muttusvami Dikshitar has composed, firstly, I want to mention that even though he is a vaggeyakara, there is both the aspect of vag as well as geya. And how apt it is that Ramayana has also served as an inspiration for the vaggeyakaras. Of course, everybody knows about Tyaga Brahma, Tyagaraja Rama was his Upasya Devata. He was also a great Vaggeyakara. There is Vag Amsha and there is Geya Amsha. Just like how Ramayana also has got Pathye Geye Cha Madhuram, as Valmiki himself puts it across. So in this talk, unfortunately, I'm not going to deliberate on the Geya part of SriRama Kṛtis of Muttusvami Dikshitar, because for that, I need a very good kantha, which I am not blessed with. So it won't be the musical exposition or deliberation of Muttusvami Dikshitar Kṛtis. However, the Pathya part of it, the Vak part of it, the foundation of it, based on which, where exactly what word in that particular composition has to be expanded, has to be stressed upon, these things become more clearer for those who are into that art. And from the perspective of an audience, the Shrotra Varga or the Sahridaya Varga, from Shrota to Sahridaya, the journey takes place not only with the music, but also the lyrics associated with that music. The vak, the shabda, has got the power to transcend us into that Paramapadam. That is the whole idea. That is the reason why this is Nada Vidya. This is an extension of Nada Vidya as well. So keeping this in mind, when we take a look at the number of Kṛtis that Muttusvami Dikshitar has composed on SriRama, we find 19 Kṛtis, 19 Kṛtis on SriRama alone. And amongst these 19 Kṛtis, 5 of them are note to Swara Sahityam. The musicians are very familiar with this note to Swara Sahityam. It is a Sahitya, it is a composition which is more suitable for the instruments. Now, the remaining 14 Kṛtis are composed in various ragas, and they all have got some commonalities. And the most striking commonalities are going to be discussed in each and every 14 of those compositions. Amongst these 14, 8 of them again hold a very important place because of the Vibhakti Kṛtis. They are considered as Vibhakti Kṛtis. Starting from Prathama to Saptami, in all Vibhaktis, Dīkṣitar has composed the Kṛtis. And again, Rama Rama Kalikalusha Virama, in that Kriti, he has composed it in the Sambodhana Prathama Vibhakti as well. So overall, 8 Kritis of Vibhakti Kritis and the remaining 6 explaining, describing SriRama. Now, throughout all these Kritis, there are few things that we can identify. Apart from the generic points that we usually get from Dīkṣitar compositions, the mention of the Raga Mudra or his signature name, all these things are quite familiar with all the audience who are into music, into Karnataka Shastriya Sangeeta. Apart from that, what is the depth in which Dīkṣitar actually has composed these Kritis? How exactly is the idea of this great Vaggeyakara to build that bridge for the audience, for the Sahridaya to cross, and so that they can elevate themselves to that level? In the title, it has been mentioned Paripūrṇatā. So without missing that point of Paripūrṇatā, how exactly has that Paripūrṇatā been presented? See, Pūrṇatā can be presented in several ways. For example, if we take the Hurna, as we call it in Kannada, or like in Puran Poli, as it is known in other places as well. So that Hurna that we take, that can be either put in a circular format and presented, that will also be considered as Purna, or it can be spread across and made into a Wobbattu. And again, that will also be considered as Purna because each and every inch of that delicacy is filled with the Purnata. So similarly, when we take a look at Dīkṣitar Kṛtis, especially related to SriRama Kṛtis, the Paripūrṇatāmsha has been condensed to 3 important factors. So what are these 3 important factors in which we find this commonly across all the 19, 14 plus 5, all the 19 SriRama Kṛtis, including in the Notuswara Sahityam, we find these 3 important elements which represent Paripūrṇatā. And for this representation of Paripūrṇatā, what is the idea behind which has been relied upon by Dīkṣitar is what we are going to discuss today. Just before that, I want to share an important shloka which can give us some hint related to understanding this particular Paripūrṇatā point. In the beginning of Raghuvamsha, Mahakavi Kalidasa, while describing the Dilipa Maharaja, he says that there is an important shloka that he mentions. He says, Prajanam Vinaya Dhanat, Rakshanat, Bharanadapi, Sapita. So that the king, it's not only related to Dilipa, it is actually related to all the Raghuvamsha kings. So he is Raghukula Tilaka. SriRama is considered as Raghukula Tilaka. So there are few things that are inherited. So this particular point was also inherited by SriRama, and that is the point that Dīkṣitar has touched upon. So three factors that Kalidasa mentions here: Vinayadhanam, Rakshanam, and Bharanam. Three important aspects. And throughout the 19 Kṛtis, we will find ample evidence for these three elements that have been told. Sometimes in some Kṛtis, these 3 points have been presented word by word. I mean, Sakshat, it has been presented. Shabdataha upadanam has been done. Sometimes it has been hinted. In only a couple of Kṛtis, we do not find one of the element presented. Other than that, in all these Kṛtis, we find Vinayadhanam, Rakshanam, and Bharanam, but slightly in a different sequence. The first will be always Rakshanam, and then comes Bharanam, and then comes the Vinayadhanam. So Rakshana is basically how one has to protect not only oneself, but also those who have taken refuge in us or who have relied upon us. So being born as the son of the king, he is always vested with this responsibility of Praja Rakshanam, Praja Palanam. So Palanam, Praja Paripalanam always includes Praja Rakshanam aspect as well. That is quite highlighted in the journey of Rama throughout. Whether he was sitting on the throne or not, it really did not matter to him. Throughout the journey of SriRama, the Ramasya Ayanam, whatever the path that he took, throughout Ramayanam, we find Rama practicing this samrakshanam. There's a beautiful incident where Vibhishana approaches and there was an internal discussion on whether we should accept Vibhishana into our side or not. During this time, there is a bold statement made by Rama. Abhayam sarvabhutebhyo dadamyetad vratam mama. He says that this is my vrata, that abhayadhanam. That is Rakshanam, basically. And that Rakshana part has been highlighted by the Vaggeyakara Muttusvami Dikshitar in all his SriRama Kṛtis. We will see a few examples later as well. I'm just trying to explain what Rakshana, what do we mean by Bharana, and what do we mean by Vinayadhana. And then comes the Bharana part. Bharta Sandhriyamano Bibharti is one of the Vedic Vakyas. And that Bharanam is about how one holds everything together, how one nourishes things together. Even though in the stories of Ramayana, on a regular basis, on a very clear basis, we may not find the association of Rama and Sita together at all places. But one striking point that we find throughout Dīkṣitar Kṛtis is that Sita Sahita. He has never mentioned Rama without Sita in any of his Kṛtis. That's one of the striking points that Dīkṣitar has followed. Of course, it leads to many other aspects that can be explored as well. However, here it clearly mentions that Bharana Samarthyam, that nourishment, which is very much required, that is mentioned by the association of Sita with Rama. And also that is, again, Praja Yahi Manushya Purnaha. So only with Praja, Manushya will be considered as Purna. And for that Praja to happen, there should be Patni. So that Patnitva, the Patni Sahitatvam, the association of Patni being mentioned also refers to the Paripūrṇatā, the idea of Paripūrṇatā mentioned through the second element by Muttusvami Dikshitar. So this is Rakshanam and Bharanam. Rakshanam is again an outer coverage. If we want to preserve, if we want to protect, if the nature wishes to protect the jackfruit in its originality, then of course it will come with certain outer structure. And that is the Rakshanam, that is a natural Rakshanam that appears. So similarly, yada yada hi dharmasya, as Krishna mentions, glanir bhavati bharata, abhyutthanam adharmasya, tada atmanam srajamyaham. So that Bhagavat Srishti or Bhagavat Avatara has always been seen with this idea that it has always been for the purpose of safeguarding dharma, to maintaining that natural order. And that Rakshana part has been mentioned several in all the Kṛtis, very commonly mentioned point. So that also describes how it leads to Paripūrṇatā, is what I was trying to highlight. And then the third one is Vinayadhanam. The word Vinaya, generally referred or generally translated as humility, that humble nature, which is true. But again, the word Vinaya is also very important for a seeker of Atma Jnana, for a serious seeker of Jnana. It is very important to have that Vinaya. Whether it is while approaching the Guru or while practicing the Guru Padishta Marga, or in whichever level we are, Vinaya plays an important role in describing, in formulating what we are supposed to achieve. So that Vinaya Dhanam eventually leads us to that Paripūrṇatā. That Pūrṇatā is when we understand ourselves, when we realize ourselves, that is the Pūrṇatā. I know these are some of the Vedantic elements that Muttusvami Dikshitar has imbibed into his Kṛtis. And of course, Muttusvami Dikshitar is not new to these Vedantic perspectives. Not only Vedantic perspectives, but also when it comes to Sri Vidya. Even the Sri Vidya aspects have been mentioned so beautifully. They have been so beautifully integrated in all his Kṛtis. So we find various layers when we try to decode Dīkṣitar Kṛtis. So that is the beauty of Dīkṣitar Kṛtis. It can be seen in the most bhautika part as well, the most physical aspect as well, the story that we all know. He hasn't missed any of those stories. He has mentioned all of them. He has highlighted the most important aspects of these stories. And then we also see the Bharana part being in a Daivika aspect, because as I said, in the story part, we see the viraha happening, the separation that happened between Rama and Sita. Whereas in the Kṛtis, he has kept both of them as one union, as one unit. So Sita, Rama is one unit that has been maintained by Muttusvami Dikshitar in all his SriRama Kṛtis. And lastly, Vinaya Dhanam, which eventually leads to that Parabrahma or Paramatma or that Paripūrṇatā, has also been mentioned with some of the unusual things, unusual words that cannot be easily understood as this is the thing that it is not always mentioned with the word Purna, is what I'm trying to say. He need not always use the word Purna, but again, the usage of words like Tattva, that clearly indicates that he is mentioning to that. The word Niranjana. So these are some of the words that we find in the Rama Kṛtis of Dīkṣitar, which clearly indicates that the idea was always towards that Adhyatma, towards the attainment of the highest fruit, of the greatest accomplishment of human life. So in this manner, when we see, there is a clear-cut sequence, that Bhautika to Daivika to Adhyatma. So the three layers are very clearly mentioned, and only when one succeeds in decoding all of this, only when one succeeds in exploring all of this and comprehending all of this, that's when truly we would realize that Paripūrṇatā of that Kriti. That Paripūrṇatā of Dīkṣitar Kṛtis is that it speaks to us, it talks to us in all three layers, in Bhautika, Daivika, as well as Adhyatmika. It talks about Rakshana, Bharana, and Vinaya Dhana. Like, as Kalidasa has mentioned, why only those three? That Vinaya Dhanam is also, Valmiki also mentions this particular part, which rarely gets highlighted when we talk about Rama. We view Rama as someone who had the military prowess, someone who had the ability to defeat the enemies, which is all absolutely correct. But at the same time, he also was an Atmavan. He also was a Gunavan, which was mentioned by Valmiki in the initial conversation with Narada as well. And we also see at the end of Yuddhakandam, Rame Rajyam Prashasati, there is a series of shlokas where Valmiki mentions that Pranapano Samavastam Rame Rajyam Prashasati. Ramo Rama iti prajanam abhavan kathaha. So these points absolutely hint or guide us towards the Paripūrṇatā, the idea of Paripūrṇatā that is usually mentioned in the Vedantic discourses or in the Vedantic discussions. So the point that I'm trying to highlight is, even though the Vedantic point of view is the thing that needs to be presented That is how one needs to, unnayanam has to happen. We have to lift, or we have to elevate people towards that. That is the whole purpose with which Dīkṣitar has composed the Kṛtis. But while composing, he has also kept in mind the Daivika part of it, the Archana part of it, how without Sita, the Rama Archanam is not considered complete. Without the Parivara of SriRama, the Rama Archanam is not considered complete. So he has given ample of introduction, or ample of focus, emphasis on that Daivika part of SriRama as well as the Bhautika part, which deals with the well-known stories. So the well-known stories, when we hear, as a Sahridaya, when I hear the Kriti, for example, Kodandarama Manisham in Kokilarva Ragam, when we hear that Kodandarama Manisham, Bhajami Kokilarva Janaki Ramanam, in this shlok, in this Kriti, initially it attracts us because the music is like that, the composition is like that, and the rendition, the presentation part is also beautifully done. And when it is done in such a way, it builds us a ramp, it builds us a bridge. So slowly, when we start focusing on the Vak part of that Kriti, with seeking the help of Geya part of it, because it has already been presented in the Gana format, now we have to start focusing on the Patha part of it, or the Vak part of it. And when we start focusing on the Vak part of it, we definitely get to witness these three things: the Rakshana, Bharana, and Vinayadhana. So for example, I wish, if I have time, I would love to present these three things, how Dīkṣitar has mentioned all these things in all his Rama, SriRama Kṛtis. So for one, we will see how we can find these three elements in SriRama Kṛtis of Muttusvami Dikshitar. The first Kriti is Kodandarama Manisham. So in Kodandarama, the very mention of Kodanda as an Ayudha. So that Kodanda as an Ayudha itself is giving us that idea of Rakshana. If that was not sufficient, he immediately in the Anupallavi, he mentions that Padaja Pamsu Palita Halyam. This is the word. Padaja Pamsu Palita Ahalyam. So Padaja Pamsu Bhihi, I won't take too much of Samskrita deliberation, but just a few words, that's all. Padaja Pamsu Bhihi, so with the dust of his feet, Palita Ahalya Yena Saha. Padaja Pamsu Bhihi Palita Ahalya Yena Saha Padaja Pamsu Palita Ahalya Tam Padaja Pamsu Palita Ahalyam. That is how the word has been composed. But that Palanam part is there, no? Padaja Pamsu Palita. The word Palita has been mentioned, which actually gives us that hint of Rakshanam. Rakshanam was required for Ahalya in terms of attaining to, or getting back to her previous form. So if she doesn't get back to her previous form, there is no way that she could attain the ultimate purpose of life. In order to attain that ultimate purpose of life, she needs to get back to the human form. And the one who protects her from not remaining in the form of a stone. Now, that is the idea that has been connected. You can see how everything leads to that Purnamsha or Purnata. So, Padaja Pamsu Palita Halyam is one part, one unit, which talks about Rakshanam. And then, as I said, Janaki Ramanam, everywhere there will be a mention of Sita Rama Tattvam. Throughout, it's almost like a second signature in SriRama Kṛtis of Dīkṣitar. He uses the word Sita Ramam, or the concept of Sita Rama is brought out in one way or the other. So he mentions here as Kodandarama Manisham Bhajami in the first line, Kokilarava Janaki Ramanam. So that Janaki Ramanam is clearly indicating that Bharan part of it. They are not separated, they are always together. So that part is there. And then finally, Vinayadhanam, where is this Vedantic concept mentioned? See, he himself uses the word Vedanta here by saying Vedanta Vedyam, Ati Kaushalyam, and Vishwamitra Hitam Akautilyam. Again, Vishwamitra Hitam can be categorized under the Rakshana part. The Akautilyam, the word Akautilyam comes under the category of Vinayadhanam. And when we practice that akautilyam, when we are not crooked, when we are straightforward, when we are on the path of dharma, then automatically Rama will become Vedanta Vedyam. That's why he is Vedanta Vedyam. For anybody who wants to pursue the highest order of life, the greatest phala of life, one cannot remain in the Kutila Marga. They have to leave behind the Kutila Marga. And who better than Rama to describe that, because he has walked that path. Therefore, he mentions that Vedanta Vedyam, very clearly indicating that that is the ultimate thing that one has to seek in Rama. That Vedanta Vedyatvam yadvartate, sorry, the element of Vedanta Vedyata that exists in Rama, that he is subjected to the understanding or comprehension through Upanishads. That is the ultimate fruit of Rama Tattva. That Rama Tattva is mentioned here in such a small composition, 3 lines that Dīkṣitar has written here, and it has got so many things put into it. So this describes the vision of a Vaggeyakara. Why they are called as Vaggeyakara is not only do they have the idea of what vak should be used or how that vak should actually be presented, but at the same time, it should not go away from the Geya part of it. So it should be adapted to the Geya part of it, but not at the cost of leaving behind the essence of vak. So those who can bring together, those who can merge together both the vak part as well as Geya part, they are called as Vaggeyakara. And such a wonderful Vaggeyakara was Muttusvami Dikshitar, especially in terms of SriRama. He has brought this 3 levels in Bhautika, Daivika, and Adhyatmika in all his Kṛtis. This was the first Kriti, that Kodanda Rama Manisham. And then comes the next one is a note to Swara Sahityam, that is Dasharathe. Dasharathe, Dina Bandho, Danava Bhikara. I don't have to even work too much on this Kriti because the words are very simple, very easy to understand. And if we have 3 columns, we can categorize them and we understand how exactly all these ideas have been presented. See, when I say these ideas have been presented, it's not forcefully picked. They are naturally existing there. So it is left to the discretion of the person who actually presents it. And also, it is left to the discretion of the Sahridaya on what point should I highlight. So it is very simple. When we hear something, we want to hear things that according to our samskara. Our samskara usually plays an important role in the way we perceive things as well. So if the samskara can be worked out, if that samskara is given in such a way, so keep on listening to these Sangeeta kacheris that happen. So when the public gets involved in these Sangeeta kacheris, Ramotsavas, and they keep on hearing to these classical music, to this Karnataka Shastriya Sangeeta, what happens is it develops a unique blend of samskara, where they will not only focus on the tala aspect, they will also focus on the raga aspect and also on the bhava, and as a bedrock of all these things, they will also start focusing on the lyrics part of it, on the vak part of it. And when the word actually gets, padasya sthapite sthairye hanta siddha saraswati is how Sahitya Shastra says, padasya sthapite sthairye. So that pada has to be very, very stable. It has to be resurrected there. It has to be erected there. It has to be put there in such a way that it will never go away from our mind. There is not one word from Dīkṣitar Kṛtis that we can take out and say that maybe this word would have been better. The same kind of parameter that we use to gauge or judge the likes of Kalidasa, the great poets, it is exactly the same kind, it is exactly the same category to which Dīkṣitar also belongs. So next time when we listen to Dīkṣitar Kṛtis, rather than only focusing and appreciating the music part of it, which we should do, but that should work as a bridge for us to move towards the vak part of it. From Geya to vak, that is the journey of a Sahridaya. And for a person who is presenting it, for a Sangeetakara, It is always from Vak to Geya. So it works both ways. So like Bhavabhuti mentions whether it is Vak or Artha first. Rishinam Punaradhyanam Vacham Artho Nudhavati. Laukikanam hi sadhunam, for common people, Artham Vag Anuvartate. We follow behind the meaning. So the meaning is already there. We have to follow it. We have to sense. We have to smell that. Whereas for rishis, Vacham Artho Nudhavati. They put the word there and the meaning will follow. And such is the level of our vaggeyakaras. And I'm not saying that only Muttusvami Dikshitar, but also other vaggeyakaras as well. But especially Muttusvami Dikshitar, because of the kind of depth we find in Dīkṣitar Kṛtis, with each and every word, it can be turned into an hour-long lecture on one word. Why exactly that word? Why in this sequence? Why Dasharathe Dina Bandho? And he has not, in all this jungle, while describing Paripūrṇatā, while bringing out Paripūrṇatā of Rama in his Rama Kṛtis, never once we find Dīkṣitar missing out on the Madhurya part of the presentation. And there should be that Shabdalankara should be there, the ease of pronunciation should be there, the connection should be there. And that part has also been kept in mind. When he says, Dasharathe Dina Bandho Dana Vaggeyakara Damodara, we see that all four words start with the. That is a unique style. That is an alankara that he has brought. He has not compromised on the aesthetics of the Kṛtis. And along with aesthetics, he has powerfully capsuled all these things. And the Rakshana, Bharana, and the Vinaya Dhana part, the Adibhautika, Adhidaivika, and Adhyatmika part as well. Anyway, now Dina Bandhu, Dana Vaggeyakara, and then Keshava Mamava, Sita Dhava. Here we see the second element, Sita Dhava. Dhava means Pati. So Sita Dhava has been mentioned in this Kriti. And then Keyurahara, Raghuvira, Komala Padabja, Kodanda Rama, Shyamala Vigraha, Sampurna Kama, Nama Kirtana Sadamoda, Narada Veena Hlada Hlada. So here the word Sampurna Kama, Atma Kama, Purna Kama, these are the kind of words that sound very familiar when we look into the Upanishad Sahityam. So if we are even close to Upanishad Sahityam, if we just find ourselves closely related to Upanishad Sahityam, if the words have fallen on our ears, then we will find that, yes, Sampurna Kama, it just clicks, that it opens that file that we must have saved while listening to Upanishads. So this is the beauty of Dīkṣitar Kṛtis. He gives those hints. He has these hyperlink kind of things in his entire composition, which will lead us towards that, whether it is Navagraha Kṛtis or Abhayamba Kṛtis, Kamalamba Kṛtis, everywhere, one hint will always be there towards avidya, towards Vedanta. So that is the brilliance of Dīkṣitar. Okay, all right. So this, in the second Kriti, we find all these three elements that has been mentioned. And then one more notice for Sahityam is Pahimam Janaki Vallabha. The word itself is very clear. Janaki Vallabha has taken care of the Bharana part of it. And then Dehime Sampadam Dina Chintamane, in all these things, Ehik, in the last line, I'll just focus on the last line here. Ehik Akutstha Kodandahasta Dīkṣitartha Pradāhlāda Chitta. So he uses the word Kodandahasta here. And when it comes to that Kodandahasta again refers to the Rakshana part, and also Kakutstha, the word, it refers to his lineage as well. That reminds that he is meant for the Praja Rakshanam. Another interesting thing is it is always either Praja Rakshanam or Praja Palanam. There is not a word in Sanskrita where it gives that idea of ruling the people. The word rule always is associated. Our original idea is that Palanam, Poshanam, or Bharanam, Rakshanam. So these are the kind of words. I mean, they sound very much connected to the public as well. Anyway, so that Kodandahasta refers to the Rakshana part. And when he says, where is the idea of Vinaya Dhana? Where is that Adhyatmika Tattvam in this particular Kriti? So the Anantamurti, he called Rama as Anantamurti. So these are some of the unique elements that we don't find often mentioned in Valmiki's Ramayana, at least. That's the one thing that I have read, I have seen. So we don't find Valmiki using these kind of words for Rama while describing him or while giving him an adjective. Ananta, Paripurna, Sampurna. These are some of the words that he refrains from because of the nature in which he has propounded it. However, Dīkṣitar, while presenting it, he doesn't shy away from mentioning Rama as Paripurna, Ananta, Ananda. He also mentions Ananda. He calls SriRama as Ananda. So that clearly indicates that the hint is towards that Paripūrṇatā of Rama. And then the most popular one, that is Mamava Pattabhirama. Everybody has been exposed to that beautiful kriti of Mamava Pattabhirama in Raga Manirangu, Mishra Chaputala, and all these details are very trivial for a person like me who is not into the music, but only the Vak part of the Vaggeyakaras is where I have something, some appreciation. That's all. So Mamava Pattabhirama in this kriti, well, I'll just go to the part where we find that Sitaya Saha Samsthita. Where exactly Sitaya Saha Samsthita? Along with Sita. He mentions it in very clear words. Sitaya Saha Samsthita. Where exactly? Vichitra Manimaya Simhasane. So on that throne, so because this is Pattabhirama, so after their return to Ayodhya, this kriti seems to denote to the story of Ramayana where they return to Ayodhya. So that part he mentions Sitaya Saha Samsthita. That is done. And then Parama Pavitra. That is the word that actually describes that Vedantic perspective, that brings out that Vedantic perspective, where he mentions Parama Pavitra. Pavitranam Pavitram Yaha, Mangalanancha Mangalam. So the same idea has been taken here as well when we mention that why he is considered as Pavitranam Pavitram Yaha. So that is very clearly indicated in this kriti as well. And then the next kriti is the same idea, Mamava Raghuvira. Mamava Pattabhirama is one kriti. The second one is Mamava Raghuvira. And here he mentions Martyavatara. The very mention of the word Martyavatara gives us that hint of Martyavatarastva Martya Shikshanam. The whole package of Rama, or the whole purpose of Ramayana being put forth in one word. How Dīkṣitar captures the idea of Martyavatarastva Martya Shikshanam is the whole purpose of Ramayana. Why should one go through Ramayana? That idea has been presented as Martya Shikshanam. It is an education for people like us on how to live, how to move on, how to move in our life, how we should conduct ourselves. And all of that has been captured in one word when he says Martyavatara. It's not like he could not have found any other word from Makara. He doesn't have any dearth of words. He is a Vaggeyakara. He doesn't really have any dearth of words. And at the same time, observe how he has maintained that aesthetics part as well. Mamava Raghuvira Martyavatara. Ma has been repeated. Mamava Raghuvira Madhavadhira. That word Madhava, Ma is Lakshmi, basically Sita, and Dhava. The word has been used in that sense as well. And then the most striking point that we find in this kriti is how he mentions Rama, or he equates Rama with that Paratattva. So he calls as Tvamahu Rishadayaha Tattvamiti. Ishadayaha Tvam Tattvamiti Ahuti. So all the gods, Ishadayaha Tvam Tattvamiti Ahuhu. The word Tattva has been used, which is very rarely found, almost not found in Valmiki's description of Rama. Very rarely we find that. But look at Dīkṣitar, how he brings about that idea of Vedantic perspective of Rama in the same kriti. It's not like he has written a different kriti to expose or to explore these aspects. All of them put together in one kriti. So it's like based upon the Adhikari Varga of the audience, whether they are Mandadhikari, Madhyamadhikari, or Uttamadhikari. It really doesn't matter. So based upon that Adhikaritvam, one can actually relate themselves. And even for those who find themselves as Mandadhikaris, it's not like they cannot attain or they cannot reach the fruits of that has been mentioned, or the details that have been put forth for an Uttamadhikari. Even that can be achieved. But the way in which one has to focus, one has to keep listening. And what it does is, once we get this sort of an idea, once we start understanding these Kṛtis in depth, in detail, and then both as a presenter as well as a Sahridaya, as an audience, as a Shrota, if both of them have got this kind of education, like how we see in Kavya Prakasha, Mammata, when he says the Kavya Prayojana or Kavya Lakshana, in all these places, he keeps both the Kavi as well as Sahridaya in his mind. So similarly, it is not only about the Sahridaya, it is also about the presenter, the artist, as well as the Sahridaya, and the connection that exists between both of them, how it is mutually moving from one to another. That is why it is a samvada. Samvada is a circular motion. From Hridaya samvada should happen there. So from the poet to the audience. Similarly, from the artist, from the Sangeetagara, from the Vaggeyakara to the Shrota, it should happen. So in that point, when we may not be able to realize this in one go, but if we have this notion, if we have this idea, if we have explored this once, then next time when we hear, we will want to focus on these points, and that will eventually lead us to the Parama Prayojanam of Manavajan. Because if we consider Sangeeta as Anada Vidya, if that can lead us towards Parabrahma, it should not remain only in theory. There should be a practicality of it. And that practicality has to be backed up by such profound Shabdarashi as well. So only when there is a profundity in Vak and the same presentation in Geya format, if it is presented in the Geya format, and then if it can be expressed in the same way, then Tebhyo Mahadbhyo Namaha Tanantarena Nipatet Vanumat Pranamaha. So if not my pranamas for these kind of great people, great musicians who can bring this forth, then who else deserves my pranama? As Bhojaraja mentions in Jambu Ramayana, the same idea. How the rishis have given us that Veda. Similarly, when we listen to the music, it is that sweetness, it is that madhuryam, it is that Paripūrṇatā that is brought, but it is brought in such a way that there is no misconception, there is no misleading of information, there is no mixture, there is no alien stream or a foreign stream joining into it. It's pure, it's Paripurna, and it is pure. That's how Dīkṣitar Kṛtis usually function. So this was in Mamava Raghuvira. I have just 5 minutes left, and I'll just mention few more Kṛtis and we will move on. Then another notice for Sahityam is Rajiva Lochanam, Ramachandram, and here we find Sadguna Sandram, Shantam. He mentions the word Shantam. And again, in one of the Kṛtis, while mentioning the Navarasas of Rama, they also Muni Jane Shantam. He had that Shanta Rasa as well, as a personification of Shanta Rasa. It was Muni Jane Shantam that has been mentioned here as well. And then Vibhishana Vinuta Padam explains that Rakshana part, Kodandakaram, Kaustubhadharinam. So all these things has been mentioned by him. And of course, when we see the Sita part, that is one thing, as I mentioned, which is missing from this particular Kriti, where we don't find the word Sita being mentioned. But that's okay. Only in this Kriti that has been missed. But otherwise, in every other Kriti, we find the element of Sita being mentioned. And then the most famous Vibhakti Kritis we have. So Ramachandrasya Dasoham is in Shashti Vibhakti. In the very next line, Sita Nayakasya, he uses the word Sita Nayakasya. And then Samadana Bheda Bhedadi Chaturasya, that mentions again the Rakshana part, Sajjana Palasya, Dushtaharasya. And then he uses the word Shabari Moksha Pradasya. Shabari Moksha Pradaha. The word moksha has been presented there. it's a very small element of Ramayana Katha. And when we look at the big picture, that occupies a very small portion, but to highlight that and to bring it out in order to fulfill and give it as a complete Kriti, Dīkṣitar has made use of that particular instance. This is what is called as using the poetic freedom to the best of their ability. Then Ramachandra Danyam. This is another unique Kriti because this is in Panchami Vibhakti Kriti and also in Tritiya Vibhakti Kriti. Ramachandrena Samrakshitoham is Tritiya Vibhakti Kriti and Ramachandra Danyam Najane. In both these Kritis, we don't find the Sita part. The Sita Rama part is not found in these two Kritis as well. But we find plenty of indications towards the Rakshana part where he mentions Karadushanadi Mari Subahu Mari cha Karadushanadi Madaharanantaka Rupina. Antaka Rupina. He mentions Rama as the death incarnate for these Rakshasas. And then Sangeeta Tattva Bodhinaha. He mentions Rama as Sangeeta Tattva Bodhin. Agrevachayate Prabhanjana Sute Tattvam Munibhyah Param Vyakhyatam Bharatadibhyah Parivritam Ramam Bhaje Shyamalam. So in that shloka as well, Agrevachayate Prabhanjana Sute Tattvam. That Tattvam is always there. It was always there in Rama's Sabha. So that has been mentioned here as Sangeeta Tattva Bodhinaha. In Ramachandraya Namaste, in the Chaturthi Vibhakti Kriti, we see that Sadhu Janadi Palanaya very clearly indicates that. And then Dashagriva Pranaharaya, that is another important aspect. That and Kusha Lava Sita Sametaya is the part which explains the Daivika part or the Bharana part of it. Okay. So similarly, I'm just running out of time. So similarly, there are many other Kritis. The other Vibhakti Kritis, and then Kshitija Ramanam is another important Kriti. Santana Ramaswaminam is one Kriti that I want to focus and end with this particular Kriti. Santana Ramaswaminam is composed on a particular deity found in a particular region. Even then, just look at the way Rama has been presented. He says, Santana Ramaswaminam Saguna Nirguna Swarupam Bhajare. He is described as both Saguna as well as Nirguna. The same kind of description that we find in Srimad Bhagavatam when Krishna Avatara happens. So for Vasudeva, he appeared as Saguna. For Devaki, Rupam Yattat Prahura Vyaktamadhyam, he appeared as a Nirguna. So he's both Saguna and Nirguna. That aspect, that element has been brought out so beautifully by Dīkṣitar in this case. And he mentions as Yamunamba Purinivasantam, that is a particular place in where this deity is mentioned. And then Janaki Dhavam is also mentioned. Antaranga Guruguha Samvedyam. He mentions along with his signature Guruguha, Antaranga Samvedyam. Pratyagatmana Maikshat. Kaschidhira Pratyagatmana Maikshat is the Upanishad. So that equation is found in Dīkṣitar Kriti. Where he mentions Antaranga Samvedyam, not Bahiranga Samvedyam, but after having witnessed, after having done that Sakshatkaram of that Daiva, Bahyetvam Samyakarchaya. That's what happens. And the way one has to lead towards Rama, how one can step ahead towards that Vedanta Tattva of SriRama, Anrita Jada Dukkha Rahitam Anadyam. Only when we reach that Anrita Jada Dukkha Rahitam, there should be no lies, there should be no Jadatvam, there should be no Dukkha. And when we have crossed these three, we reach that Anadyam, that Anadi Tattva, that is Rama. That is the way how Dīkṣitar has placed the words. And he has done it deliberately with the intention of not forgetting what is the ultimate purpose of life at any given point of time. If anybody says that Sangeeta is only for entertainment, that is not true at all. In Bharatiya perspective, it is never true that Sangeeta was meant for only entertainment purposes. It was meant as an Atma Vidya. It was meant for the sadhana, for the Atma sadhana. And if that is the case, and if we find that in the stories of the legend of Tyagaraja Swami as well, if that was true, then it must hold true to even this day when we deliberate on Sangeeta. So that Sangeeta Vidya, especially when we speak of Dīkṣitar Rachanaha or Dīkṣitar Kṛtis, we have to bear in mind that Dīkṣitar Kṛtis comes with plenty of layers. These are the three that I have mentioned. And if we keep digging into Dīkṣitar Kṛtis, I'm very sure, I'm very confident that we will find many more aspects that are fascinating initially, but it just proves that one Kriti is sufficient for one to elevate themselves. So it need not be all the 19 Kritis must be heard or anything, or all the Dīkṣitar Kritis must be heard. Any one Dīkṣitar Kriti of SriRama is sufficient enough for us to get us, to elevate us to that Parabrahma Tattva. That is the brilliance in which each and every Kriti, he could have simply said that, in any one Kriti, I will mention all these things. But no, in all the Kritis, SriRama has been presented by Dīkṣitar in this format. This was more about, in conclusion, I would like to say that Dīkṣitar has given an idea of SriRama. He has presented an idea of SriRama in three different layers in his compositions, in his Kritis. And he has not forgotten the audience at any given point of time. He knows the Shrotas very well. So for the Shrota as well, starting from the simple elements, the stories, the episodes of Ramayana, he has built around those famous episodes of Kaushika Yaga Rakshaka. So that's a very simple episode of Vishwamitra Yaga Samrakshana that Rama did. And from there, how he climbs up, how he takes us to that Sita Dhava, Madhava, Janaki Vallabha. And then eventually in Ananda, Tattva, Tvamahu Rishadayas Tattvamiti. So until there, the Dīkṣitar's Kritis range is there. And the whole purpose of this presentation was that when we hear Dīkṣitar Kritis, we should not focus only on the musical aspect of it or the aesthetics of it. Along with aesthetics, there is something deep down in Dīkṣitar Kritis which forms the very basics of the Bharatiyata. If it has to be a Bharatiya Tattva, if it has to be Bharata, Bha and Rata, if it has to happen as Bharata, then this is the way of that Kriti, the way the Kriti has to be understood. With these words, I would like to thank Dr. Nagaraj for this wonderful opportunity to talk about Dīkṣitar and Ramayana. It's like, I remember that one famous shloka, Draksha and the Madhu. Okay. It's a mixture of Draksha and Madhu. When he talks about how Champu is such a beautiful combination, a blend of both Padya and Gadya. Kasyana Swadate. So similarly, to bring Dīkṣitar and Ramayana together, that was a similar experience for me. So I want to profusely thank Dr. Nagaraj and all the members in INDICA for giving me this opportunity. I know it was no presentation, nothing. I sincerely hope that people were able to receive this, and just because when we hear the Sangeeta Kacheri, there is no presentation going on, no slides going on, but still the hearing ability enables us to focus on what word needs to be focused in that Kriti and how it can elevate us, all three layers presented in one Kriti. So with this thing, I would like to conclude my talk, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Namaste.
Thank you very much, Vishwanath ji. It was such an enlightening presentation, particularly to all the connoisseurs of Dīkṣitar's Kritis, who definitely would have loved the music, but those who wanted to know the deep meanings inside, particularly on the Rama-related Kritis, this was a very enlightening talk. I was checking if there are any questions in the question and answer box. There were no questions related to your talk. There is only one thank you from one of the anonymous attendees for this highly enlightening talk. So this living traditions idea how it is there in classical music, particularly the Carnatic music, it is being expounded by scholars like you. Thank you very much, sir.